Okay, as everybody has been chatting about what happened in Eretz Yisrael, it's pretty much 50 years since the Yom Kippur War, and this was the most horrific attack on Eretz Yisrael, a planned, widespread terrorist attack, which with 3,500 rockets and door-to-door machine gunning of civilians in Sderot and in 5 other towns. It really, there was a music festival, and they killed 240 people at the music festival. It was really terrible. There were nisim. There were 50 hostages that were saved. There were hostages saved in Ofakim. So who knows? Our Ana Hashem Oishiana, Ana Hashem Atzlichana could have made a very big difference.
Biden's $5 billion that he gave them didn't help.
Yeah. Well, Biden and Obama definitely hurt us. But Leiv Malachim V'Sarim B'Yad Hashem. It's even a waste of time to talk about that. The thing is the famous Gemara. Aim Daisayu Ragleinu B'Sharayich Yerushalayim. So the Gemara darshans in Masechtas Makis. Aim Daisayu Ragleinu, our feet stand in battle. Our soldiers succeed. B'Sharayich Yerushalayim, when there's learning at the gates of Yerushalayim. So it gives us an extra kavana when we learn for the protection of thousands and thousands of our brethren who are in harm's way now, fighting, because this is an all-out war, Operation Iron Sword. It's an all-out war, and I mean, they're going to have to show such tremendous repercussions that they don't think to do this again so quickly. And of course, we're going to then be condemned by the whole world, which is part of what happens. Although this time they made a mistake, they killed a lot of foreign people, French people, British people, Mexican people. So they might have overstepped their bounds over here. But the Maisa is they asked the Ger Rebbe, what should you say? What does he say when things like this happen? And he says Tillim. And that's our response. Eila v'rechev, ve'eila v'asusim. They come with their chariots and their horses, their tanks, their missiles. V'anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu nazkir. So we'll start the shir now with the kapitel Tillim. Shilam Allah, he says, Oina yelehorim, me'ayin yaba yezvi. Ezvi me'yem Adonai, yosei shamayim va'aretz. Al yitein lamoit raglecha, al yonum shomrecha. Hinei lo yonum v'lo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha. Yomi Hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach b'layla. Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra, yishmar es nafshecha. Adonai yishmar tzeischa v'yecha. Me'ata v'yad olam. Achinu kol beis Yisrael. And the Sunnah Batzara Vashivya, Imdim Beimayam, Beimayam, Shamakim Rachim Aleim, Vyotziam Mitzah Levacha, Mafela Ura Mishabelugulash, Tavagalav Man Karev, Vinoimar, Amen. Okay, our best response in, far away from battle is to learn Torah. Torah is Megan and Matzlai. It's kisris b'fnei aparaniyos. to strengthen our avodas Hashem, to daven. I remember they asked Reb David Feinstein when there was a terrible matzav in Eretz Yisrael, what to do, and Reb David Feinstein said, we don't say Tachnun now, but when we start to say Tachnun again, he said the V'hu Rachem on Mondays and Thursdays is a very good place to always have in mind for when Klal Yisrael in a place in the world is suffering, especially in Eretz Yisrael. We are holding at the top line of Daf Nun He Amud Aleph. I just want to see everything, all systems go over here, yes. We're holding on the top of Nun He Amud Aleph. We learn, sponsored by Baruch Ian, Lila Nishmas Esther Bas Yoni, Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKohen, for the Refuah Shalema of Baruch Shlomo Ben Lina, by Aaron Swade, Lili Nishmas, his first wife Chana Bas Shmuel, and his sister Freda Bas Shaul, by Shimon Deer for the Chayla Yadaf and Chayla Yisrael, by Mark Frank, Refuah Shalema for Miriam Sarah Bas Sipora, and Chana Bas Gittel Esther, by Baruch Goldwasser for Hakar Satay, for what Hashem did for his family and for the Chayla Yisrael, for my Shver, who made it to Yisker, but not anything else, Avigdor Aryeh ben Rivka, and Meir ben Chayesara, and Yehuda Cyril Bas Miriam. We, on this, I said over in Shul tonight, at the end of davening, I said that in Slonim they say that the same Rabbeinu Shalom that we thank that Ata v'chartanu, that he chose us and he gave him Yom Tovim, is the same Rabbeinu Shalom that we say tonight, Ata chanantanu, who graces us, Lamada Sarisecha, and as we head into the winter, we should have in mind that the commitments that we made, Hashem should allow us to fulfill them and learn more Torah and give more tzedakah. Now we have an extra reason to pursue all these good activities. We welcome in Mel Zachter, A.B. Spry.
Can we learn for David Ben Moshe, who got killed this weekend?
David Ben Moshe, his neshama should have an aliyah. Somebody you knew, A.B.?
My daughter-in-law's brother.
In Sderot?
I don't know.
You don't know. See how close it is to home. David Ben Moshe. Neshama should have aliyah, and as we say, Hashem Yinkum Damai. Dr. Block, Israel Fisher, Irving Fishbaum, Stephen Holtzman, Marshall Castle, Aaron Swade, Mordechai Sultan, Mo Kushner, Mark Frankel, Yitzi Muller, Shimon Klein, Shelley Zeitlin, Nachman Chapler, Saba, Michal, Avi Ament. It's good to have you, Avi. Gedalia Engel, Moshe Lehman, Yehuda from Yerushalayim, Chaim Bron, Yehuda from Yerushalayim, I'm glad you're safe. Chaim Bron, Abe Arbach, Ilya Shutman, Moshe Jackman, Rabbi Kranz, David Helfgott on Kololoshin, Abba Steinhauser, Larry Tuchinski, Elliot Udell. So, Tanan Awesome, we learned in Mesechtes Shkolim, Behema Shenimtzes Miyushalayim Lemigdal Eder, an animal that's found from Yerushalayim until Migdal Eder, which is near Beis Lechem, Ukemidasa, and that amount of distance, L'chol Ruach, in every direction, to the east, west, etc., we assume that the animal, of course, in Yerushalayim and in that range till Migdal Eder in every direction, we assume it to be a carbon, and therefore Zecharim, if it's a male, we assume it's olos, it's burnt offerings, and the kavis, if it's a female, we assume that it's Zifrei Shlamim, that it's peace offerings. So now that's right away, that begs the question. A male animal could also, it could be a burnt offering, because a burnt offering has to be a male, but it could also be a shlamim, because a shlamim could be a female or a male. Ela zechayrim olus it's only possible it's a burnt offering. Zivchei shlamim loyavu, it's not possible to be a peace offering. Amar Rabbi Ishia says, what happens over here is that the person who finds it wants to make it right. He wants to take care of its obligation, whatever it might be. He's a good person, and he wants to obligate himself the money to replace what this carbon might be. And if therefore what it means is if it's a male, it might be a burnt offering, it might be a peace offering. So he takes 2 bundles of money, and he says that if this carbon is an oila, so then the kedusha should go on to this money, which I'll buy with it an oila in its stead. And he takes another bundle and says, if it's a shlamim, the kedusha should go on this money, and I'll buy a shlamim. If it's not a shlamim, then this shlamim will be a voluntary shlamim. If it's not an oila, it'll be a voluntary oila. Reb Meir and it's going according to Reb Meir, the Amar hektish mezid mischala, that if you try to deconcentrate willfully, you could deconsecrate it. So you could deconsecrate this animal. So right away the Gemara says, what? The animal has a Kiddushin's carbon. Kiddushin's carbon is a high level of Kiddusha called Kiddushin's aguf, intrinsic Kiddusha. You can't deconsecrate, take off the Kiddusha of Kiddushin's aguf, or Kiddushin's aguf mi mischalel. V'tanan ein moyel achar moyel. There's no trespass after trespass, because once you misappropriate hektish, the kedusha goes off. So you can't have multiple trespass on the same thing. Ein moyel achar moyel b'mektashin ela b'behema, except for an animal dedicated as a carbon, because that's kedusha saguf. So the kedusha doesn't go off, and therefore you could have multiple meila, or b'klei sharis bilvat, or if it's a ministering vessel. Ketzad, the Gemara gives an example. If you were riding an animal that was dedicated as a carbon, so you commit meila, and your friend wrote it, and and your friend wrote it, 3 people wrote it, kulamalu, they're all commit trespass, because kedusha doesn't go off from kedusha saguf. Similarly, if you're drinking from a golden klei sharis, and b'chavero v'shasa, and your friend drank from it, and b'chavero v'shasa, kulamalu, they all commit mila, because the kedusha doesn't go off. Says the Gemara, well, hahi Reb Yehudi, that's going according to Reb Yehuda, that the kedusha doesn't go off b'mezid. Ha Reb Meir, this is going according to Reb Meir. Says the Gemara, yeah, but when we say Elu ve'elu divrei elikim chayim, that means that even opposing views, we could learn out an element from the opposition. Mid Reb Yehuda nishma l'Reb Meir. Lav Amar Reb Yehuda holds hektish b'shoigeg mischalo, that hektish, if it's done unwittingly, the kedusha goes off, but not a carbon, but a kedusha saguf. The kedusha doesn't go off from a klei sharis or from a carbon, even if you do it unwittingly. Loy mischala. L'Reb Meir nami, even though he holds b'mezid the kedusha goes off, afal gav the hektish b'mezid mischala, but kedusha saguf loy mischala. The kedusha saguf doesn't go off. Says the Gemara, it's not a good comparison. When Rabbi Yehuda holds b'shoigeg, it doesn't go off from a carbon, from a klei shares. Hasam loy kamechaven la'apakinu l'chulin. There you didn't intend to take it out l'chulin. Hacha, when you do it b'mezid, kamechaven la'apakinu l'chulin, you have in mind to take off the kedusha, and therefore, according to Reb Meir, b'mezid, the kedusha goes off even from a carbon. Says, well, Ema de Shamat Leila Reb Meir b'kache kache. we hear that Rameir holds that by Holy of Holies. Bekachim kalim mishamaslay. Does he say it by more lenient kachim? So the Gemara answers very simple. Well, it's a kal v'chaimer. Amalei Homer Rabbanan, one of the rabbis said, "V'Rab Yaakov Shmei Kal V'Chaimer." If kachim is kalim, if the kedusha goes off by Holy of Holies, kachim kalim like kol shchein, it should surely go off by more lighter kachim. Imar nami Amar Rab Chama Bar Akiba Amar Rab Yosef Rab Chanina Omer Hoyer Rab Meir. Rab Meir said, "Hektish b'meizid mischal, hektish." Willfully, the kedusha goes off. B'shagig, unwittingly, a mischalel, and this is true. Echad kachay kachim, where the Holy of Holies, echad kachim kalim, kal v'chaimer. If it's true by kachay kachim is kalim, even though kachay kachim is more sanctified, kachim kalim for sure like kol shchei. However, the Gemara says this doesn't make sense. Here we're talking about a good Samaritan. Who's a good Samaritan? Yisrael Fisher, right? So he's a good Samaritan, and he found this animal, which has a kedusha of a kedushas aguf, and you're telling him to do the sin of deconsecrate, even if according to Rameir it is deconsecrated, but it's not allowed. You're not allowed to deconsecrate a animal that is unblemished, that has kedusha. And you're telling him to do it in order to help this person, that he should, his carbon should be good, whatever it is. Will we say that Yisrael should get up and sin, that this person should have his animal brought regardless of what it is? So forget about it. That's not pshat. Pshat is Yisrael finds this animal, and we assume, since it was in Yerushalayim, or from Yerushalayim to Migdal Eder, in any direction, we assume that it's a carbon. If it's a male, he waits until it gets a blemish, which is not an easy process, but he's a patient guy, Yisrael. He goes out to Tannisville so he could listen to Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss more often, and he lets it out, it gets a mum, and now he redeems it. Once it has a blemish, he could redeem it. And he redeems it for either an Ayla or a Shlamim. Says the Gemara, Elam Rab Yechim mamtin lo ad shetumam. He waits until it gets a blemish. Umaisi shtei behemis. And he brings two animals. Umasna. And he stipulates, well, if it was an Ayla, it should be an Ayla. If it was a Shlamim, it should be a Shlamim. So now the Gemara says, is that the only two choices? If it's a male, if it's an Ayla or a Shlamim? Amar Mar Zechayrim Aylais, there's another possibility. Dilma Taida, maybe it's a Thanksgiving offering. A Thanksgiving offering could also be a male. So the Gemara says, you're right, he brings a third animal, the Maisi Nami Taida. He brings a Thanksgiving offering. It needs to be accompanied by 40 loaves. Says the Gemara, D'maisi nami lechem. He brings 40 loaves. Says the Gemara, okay, but besides the shlamim, the ayla, and the taida with the 40 loaves, it could be a guilt offering. V'dilma ashimhu. Says the Gemara, well, ashim ben shtei shanim. A guilt offering is usually 2 years old. And the animal that he found was a male 1-year-old. V'ishtakach ben shanim. But wait a second. There are, of the 5 guilt offerings, there are 2 ashims that are 1 year old. V'dilma ashim mitzayrahu or ashim nazaru. Maybe it's an ashim mitzayra or an ashim nazar, which are 1 year olds. Says Gemara lo shlichei. No, that's not shliach. It's not shliach to have an ashim nazar, an ashim mitzayra. So we're not worried. But v'dilma pesachu. Maybe it's a Pesach. A Pesach was a male yearling. Says, well, Pesach bismanai. If it's on the 14th of Nisan, it's not likely that people lost their Pesach. With Pesach, we're very careful. You watch your Pesach. It belongs to the whole Chabura. Mizah Zahire. It's not likely that it's a Pesach. And if it was another time of the year, it was a Pesach that was lost, well, a Pesach that's lost has a din of a shlamim, and you're already bringing a shlamim. V'shaloi bizman is shlamimu. But there's still another two possibilities. Maybe it's a bechar, a firstborn, or maybe it's ma'aseh behema, maybe it's the 10th animal that came out of the corral. V'dilma bechar or ma'aseh ninu, maybe it's a bechar or ma'aseh behema. So the din of bechar and ma'aseh behema is it can't be redeemed. So anyway, he can't redeem that. What does he have to do? He has to make sure that if it's a bechar or a ma'aseh behema, he treats the animal that has a mum with the proper kedusha. He can't sell it in the market. He can't weigh it with a scale like they do in the butcher shop. Says the Gemara, "V'dilma bechar ma'aseh." No, you're right. Lamai hilcha. So what would that be applicable? Since you can't redeem if it's ma'aseh or bechar, l'michlinu b'muman, to eat the original animal with the kedusha that it deserves as a blemish. You can't sell it in the market, etc. So hachanami b'muman sachla. You'll be careful. He'll be careful to treat the original animal with that proper respect. So just, Rabbi Yisrael, just that you should know, when you go to Tannersville and you wait for this animal to get a mum, bring enough money so that you could buy an animal as an ayla, an animal as a shlamim, and an animal as a toda with the 40 loaves. Okay, now we're going to go, what happens? Let's find another honest, upright individual. Avi Ament, right? So Avi finds. What happened to Marshall?
You didn't zap me yet. I'm still here.
Oh, you're there. Okay, no, because I might need you soon.
I'll be back. I got a hockey game to watch.
Anyway, Avi Ament found a female animal from Yerushalayim to Migdaleda, or in Yerushalayim, or that distance in any of the other directions. So he has to be concerned that it's a carbon. So what did we say that he does? Amamar nekeva zivchei shlamim. So again, a female could be a toda. Dilma taidahi, maybe it's a Thanksgiving offering. Demaisi taida. So again, the Gemara says, but what about the 40 loaves? V'aba'inan lechem, demaisi nami lechem. He brings the 40 loaves. But now we're getting really sticky. If it's a female, maybe it's a sin offering. And a sin offering, you can't redeem a sin offering. Says the Gemara, v'dilma chatasi. So he says, no, a chatas is a yearling, and it's talking about that Avi found a 2-year-old female. Chatas bas shnasa is a yearling, v'shtakach bas shtei shanim. Says the Gemara, well, maybe it was a chatas, and it's been wandering around for a year. So it's a chatas that got old. Maybe it's a chatas that is wandering around, lost, and now it's 2 years old. Says, we don't worry about that. That's not likely. But the Gemara says, okay, once you bring it up, what happens? This could only happen to Marshall. What happens if Marshall finds a chatas that's 1 year old, an animal that's 1 year old?
What time's the hockey game?
What happens if Marshall finds an animal that's 1 year, a female that's 1 year old? So now that could be a chatas, and he can't redeem it. So what happens then? You can't offer it because only the bailam could offer it, and you can't offer it as a chatas because it might be a shlamim and it might be a taida. Says the Gemara, Tanya Chananya ben Chachinoi Yomer. Chananya ben Chachinoi says, Eis bas shnasa lechatas. If he finds a goat 1 year old, he offers it as a chatas. Says the Gemara, you can't offer it as a chatas. Lechatas, it might not be a chatas. It might be an oila. It might be a shlamim. It might be a taida. El Amar Abai Kichatas, he has to treat it if it might be a chatas, and therefore it has to be left to starve. Kainza Lakipa, you put it into a cell, and Vihimeisa Me'ela, and it dies on its own, because you can't offer it. Rabbi said it's incredible that it's 25 minutes with our Tilim and with our Akdama about our brethren in Eretz Yisrael. We are ready to change the channel over here.